Since I made my last video about the oldest writing of the word Al-Kebulan, I could not find any description of that word in Africa earlier than the 1600s until I looked it up myself and found it in the books of Andre Thivet. Since then, there is a Wikipedia description of it, and it's the translation of what I read before, the French version of it. And I was like, okay, let me just use that because it's in English. And you can see here what it says. It says the Moors, says Thivet. This is the person that I gave in my previous video, named it Alkebulan, the Indians Bezakath, the Arabs Ifrik, a word which comes from Farouk and signifies a separate thing, as is Africa. This is the earliest description of these words being used by human beings who come from Europe, and the Europeans who state these words and say that they were used at the time seem to come to the same conclusion, which is only one of them is native to the land. Now, something that went over my head, of course, at the time was, what are their true meanings? Now, Bezakath seems to have a very obvious meaning if you look both in Thivet's books and if you look into the later Alfred Dappert's book and you look at other Europeans who continue to use the word. The word Bezakath seems to mean southerly wind. In other words, the winds that push towards the direction of Africa. Now, some people say that this word probably doesn't mean southerly wind, but means south. I think Andre Thivet makes it pretty obvious that from his point of view, the word Alkebulan is very native. Now, of course, the question is there any reference to the word Alkebulan which we can find from actual native sources? While there is not, there is some similarities. But what is more important is throwing out theories out there. One of them, which is mine, is the word al is obviously Arabic, or at least Afro-Asiatic in its origin, meaning the. But what about the Kebulan part? The only word that I can think of which sounds like that in Arabic is Qibla. And in this description, they actually have it on Wikipedia. And Qibla means south. Al Qibla, the southern regions. This would suggest that the people who wrote this may come from the north. So they might be North Africans naming the rest of the southern parts of Africa. But this would betray the original description by Alfred Dapper. And of course, his description that is also informed by Andre Thevet. As they say, this word was used by natives for natives. And so maybe the al part might be Arabic, but the Kabula part might not be. But also, they might both be Arabic. The second theory thrown out there is the word gobble. Now, even though I will explore the way that it might mean south, this is the one that I stand behind, the word gobble, and I'll show you why. First, let's read what the gobble are. So, Kabul people are a Berber ethnic group indigenous to Goblia in north of Algeria, spread across the Atlas Mountains, 160 kilometers east of Algiers. They represent the largest Berber population of Algeria and the second largest in North Africa. Now, here's the important part. The word gobble is not native. In fact, the word gobble is Arabic and it means tribe. Well, that's weird. Why is the word tribe being used for a faraway land in Arabic, far away? Well, like they said, first of all, a lot of people in Africa started speaking Arabic because of the Arabic expansion. And the word simply means tribes. And a lot of the people in Africa are large groups, the Sanhaja, all of that. And so the word gobble might have not been a reference to one specific group, as the book suggests, but instead it might have just meant the tribes of Africa. This word is so directional. It's so directional that I think we can find an Arabic word that looks exactly like Al-Kebulan. We must be able to find it. And here it is. So in the English dictionary, you put the word tribes. In Arabic, the word al-Qabail comes out. Quite clearly, al-Qabulan must be the North African version of this word, al-Qabail. If this is true, this would mean that the description given by this writer, this European writer, is accurate, which means we have to trust what he says when he says the Indians and the Indonesians, prior to the Europeans, called Africa Besakath. And you can see there, or Besakhat, as you can see there, if we look from the line down, look at the lowest line, you can see the full line. Don't count the one that is cut in half. If you start there, one, two, three, four. Thevet dance, geography, and then we read it. He says that the Moors call it or appellant Alkebulan, and les Indians Besakat. Les Arabia call it Ifrik. And you can see there, Le donner le nom Afrique. So clearly, the word Africa and the word Al-Kabul or Al-Kebulan are real words used to describe Africans for real. So there's no reason to doubt the word Bezakath, which brings up the question, what's Besakath? So the good thing is we're not working blind. We've got a lot of descriptions in our stead. So let's first think about who exactly are the people who could have made up this word. So he says Indonesians and Indians use this word. Well, Indonesians, we know, to some degree are related to Indians, but their languages stem from Polynesia. So they might have a Polynesian origin. At least this word might. Of course, India has its own origins, but I think going down this one would be much easier to see because, of course, the word monsoon, we already have that. That's the wind that takes us from Africa to India and from India and back. So we already have that. Like I said, the word Besarat means south wind. So all we need to do is find a Polynesian word which is used in Indonesia, which is similar to this word. Does such a word exist? Well, let's start with a weak one. So we start with the word Angin Selatan. The word Angin means wind, and the word Selatan means south. It may seem like we're worlds away from getting to that word, Besachat, but I think we're only one hop away. How do I know? Well, let's look at it. So, like I said, these are the markings of the winds that take people both from Africa to India. And remember, this description is written by Andre Thivet, and there are a description of words used prior to Europeans coming in, meaning this is purely local. It's a word that means Africa. It means southern winds. If you look at it, the winds take you directly to the south from places like India and Indonesia. And so, does it make sense? Will this fulfill the chart that claims that they could go all the way down to the Cape of Good Hope? Well, let's check. So, is there another language in Polynesian that is popular? Well, what about Filipino? Now, remember in the past, some of these people would write these words without giving any care of the grammar of the language. Here, we're going to look at the grammar as well. So, what we have here is the Filipino word for winds, which is hangin. The Indonesian word for winds is angin. Clearly, these words are connected. Hangin, angin, both meaning winds. The word south, which is timog in Filipino, so clearly in Filipino they've kept some of their native older words, is still kept, but in Indonesia it's Selatan, which clearly comes from the word south. Just like in Maori and many other Polynesian languages, they have lost their own native word. But since we already know now that Filipino and Indonesian are connected, meaning they have the same words for similar things, can we find a Filipino word that is similar to this other word that we already have? Besakat. Most things in history rely on a leap of faith, but we do not need to do that right now. So we have the word there, Besakat, meaning the southerly winds, the monsoon. Time to look at the Filipino word. As you can see, translated in English, Habakat, south, related to direct translation, south wind, Habakat, southwest wind, or the monsoon, Habakat, Habakat Lubang, the monsoon that leads you to Africa, at least in one Polynesian language, is Habakat. And in the other one, talking about Java and all these other places, is Besakhat. I think this is 100%, well, 90% evidence that this is where the word came from. And given the description, it means south wind. It also means south, just south, and it refers to the monsoon. So it's not just referring to any wind. Do you think I've cracked the code? Do you think that is the true meaning of the word? Is Besakhat just a slight change because of regional language? Tell me what you think in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Now we have three names for Africa, the continent, and its origins.